We've all heard it, right? Antioxidants are the good guys. They're the superheroes in our food, fighting off disease and keeping us young. So we load up on berries, we drink green tea, and a lot of us even pop supplements just to be safe. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the very thing we think is protecting us could actually be doing the opposite? Today, we're diving into a really shocking paradox that might just flip everything you thought you knew about health on its head.
Okay, so let's do a quick refresh. Our bodies are constantly producing these unstable molecules called free radicals. You can think of them as these little chaotic pinballs bouncing around inside our cells and causing damage, which is called oxidative stress. Antioxidants are like the body's cleanup crew. They swoop in, neutralize these free radicals, and keep our cells safe and sound. For a long time, the thinking was pretty simple. More antioxidants, less damage, better health. Simple.
But this is where the story takes a really sharp and, honestly, kind of unsettling turn. A ton of new research is starting to pull back the curtain on a hidden danger, especially when we talk about high-dose antioxidant supplements and people who either have cancer or are at a high risk for it. And it all boils down to this one really tough question. What if these cellular heroes, the antioxidants we rely on to protect us, could, under the right circumstances, actually end up helping the villain? In this case, the villain being cancer.
So you had this huge clash of ideas. On one hand, you've got the popular belief we all grew up with. Antioxidants are our shield against sickness and aging. But then you have the emerging reality, backed by some serious clinical data, which says that taking these compounds in high concentrated doses, like in supplements, might not just be a waste of money. It could actively help cancer get stronger, grow, and spread.
So how does this even happen? How does something that's supposed to be a protector become an accomplice? Well, let's get into the science, because it's fascinating. It turns out that oxidative stress, the very thing antioxidants are meant to fight, is a bit of a double agent. See, really high levels of oxidative stress can actually kill cancer cells. In fact, that's a big part of how chemotherapy and radiation work. But, and this is the key, moderate levels of stress actually help cancer cells not just survive, but thrive. So when you take high-dose antioxidant supplements, you might be reducing that stress just enough to create the perfect, cozy little environment for cancer to flourish. And researchers have figured out 4 key ways this happens. First off, antioxidants can literally shield cancer cells from the damage that would normally kill them. Second, they can help repair a cancer cell's DNA when it gets damaged. Third, they can flip on survival switches inside the cancer cell. And fourth, and this one is wild, they can help tumors build their own blood supply. This is a pretty recent and mind-blowing discovery from a top research institute. They found that high levels of antioxidants can activate a protein called BOC1. And when BOC1 gets switched on, it triggers a process called angiogenesis. All that means is it starts building new blood vessels. So, in plain English, the antioxidants were helping the tumor build its own network of supply lines to feed itself, which lets it grow way faster.
And look, this isn't just a theory from a lab experiment. Let's look at what the actual studies on people have shown, because this is where it gets really sobering.
This is maybe one of the most famous and alarming findings in nutrition science. A huge, really well-designed study gave smokers high doses of beta-carotene, which is an antioxidant. The expectation was, hey, this should lower their risk of lung cancer. The result? The exact opposite happened. The group taking the supplement actually had a higher rate of lung cancer. It was a massive wake-up call. And the evidence doesn't stop there. Other studies have found that for patients who are already getting chemotherapy or radiation, taking antioxidant supplements is linked to worse outcomes and lower survival rates. It makes sense, right? The treatments are trying to create stress to kill the cancer, and the supplements are basically working against the treatment, protecting the cancer cells. Okay, so after all that, I know what you're thinking. Should I stop eating blueberries? Are salads bad for me now? No, absolutely not. And that brings us to the single most important distinction in this entire conversation. Professor Martin Burgo, who's one of the leading scientists in this field, just sums it up perfectly here. Getting antioxidants from natural, whole foods seems to be totally safe and good for you. The danger comes from supplementing with high, isolated doses. The pill is just not the same as the plant. So let's be crystal clear about this. An apple is not the same as a 1,000-milligram vitamin C tablet. Whole foods are this amazing, complex package of nutrients, fiber, and all sorts of compounds that work together. That fiber helps control how you absorb things. But supplements, and you could even argue excessive juicing, which strips out the fiber, they give your body a massive, unnatural blast of one thing, and our bodies just might not be designed to handle it that way. So, with all this pretty heavy information, what are you supposed to do? How do you actually use this to make smart, informed choices for your own health?
Well, based on the research, here are some of the really common antioxidant supplements that you should probably be cautious with, especially if you have a history of cancer or are at high risk. And you'll notice these are things a lot of people take every day without a second thought, like vitamin C, vitamin E, even green tea extract and curcumin. The point isn't that these things are inherently bad, but that taking them in a concentrated supplement form is a completely different ballgame.
And that brings us to the final, most important, non-negotiable piece of advice. Before you start or stop taking any supplement, you have to talk to your doctor, especially if you have any kind of health condition. They know your personal medical history, and they can give you advice that's based on real evidence, not on something you saw in a headline or a health food store.
You know, this whole antioxidant paradox is such a powerful lesson. It teaches us that in health and science, things are almost never as simple as good or bad. It's all about context and dose, and it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other health truths that we take for granted might be worth taking a second closer look at?